Look, I mean, the problem is right now we've had a willingness to have a peace process, especially on the part of the Kurds, but that hasn't been reciprocated. When Abdullah Öcalan called for the disbandment of the PKK, there was a fundamental misunderstanding in Erdogan's mind. What Abdullah Öcalan was saying was, we look at where we are now, especially in Rojava, that is what we're all about. That's what we want to preserve. That is what is necessary. Recep Tayyip Erdogan looked at this as a victory. He won the disbandment, and he doesn't understand that on a quid pro quo, there's got to be the other side reciprocating. Now, this is very, very dangerous because the Kurds haven't forfeited their rights. And at the same time, the Turks militarily have never been able to stamp out the Kurds. And so if Erdogan doesn't engage meaningfully, I'm worried about how there will be a renewal of the fight. Now, what I just called for in this congressional hearing was the fact that until Abdullah Öcalan is freed from prison, and until the United States ends the unjust sanctions and designations against the PKK and some members of the Kurdistan National Congress, the United States can have no meaningful role as a mediator. It's not Erdogan who gets to choose whom he negotiates with. The Kurds get to choose who their negotiator is, and that's the situation that the United States needs to support. No, I don't think the Turkish government is sincere. I don't think Erdogan was ever sincere, and unfortunately, Turkey hasn't been introspective enough to deal with the racism within its own country, not only on the part of AKP, but also on the part of the Republican People's Party. Well, put it this way, there is no opposition politician, or I would say ethnic or religious minority in Turkey who is safe today. They all have a target over their heads. Now, when it comes to what Erdogan and his court did to the CHP, let's call it what it is. It was a coup. And so what I called for in this hearing was that the United States should continue to recognize Özgür as the leader of the CHP, and at the same time, we should be prepared to sanction Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu if he assumes the role that Erdogan wants him to be, which is basically being the Vichy leader of the CHP. Well, ultimately, Erdogan is, let me put it this way, I don't think it's going to have that much of an impact on the peace process because Erdogan chooses to ignore the peace process. When Erdogan arrests one politician or another politician, bombs a Kurdish village, destroys a Greek church, what he's basically doing is trying to deflect attention from his own corruption, from his own dictatorship. Nothing in Erdogan is sincere with regard to the Kurdish peace process. The question is how much damage will be done and how much power will Erdogan consolidate before the Kurds start to push back, hopefully with American support. Well, let me put it this way. The Kurds often say they have no friends but the mountains. I would argue that the Turks have no friends but Tom Barrack, and that's because Tom Barrack stands to make a lot of money from the Turks. I'm sorry, I'm not a diplomat. Let's call a spade a spade. What we see right now in Middle East policy from the United States is the most corrupt American policy that I have ever seen in the region. Now, it's one thing to have a policy disagreement. That's not how I use the term corruption. But in this case, I don't believe that rule of law or transparency or American national interests have anything to do with the embrace we see by the Trump administration or Tom Barrack towards Turkey vis-a-vis not only the Kurds, but all others in the region. I find his policies completely wrong, completely self-defeating. Look, you can't put a suit on an Al-Qaeda terrorist and believe that he has somehow changed into a progressive or a liberal. What frustrates me is when we look at the American policy statements, both under Biden but also under the Trump administration, about what we would like to see in Syria with regard to tolerance, intercommunal relations, and so forth. What they are describing as Rojava. What they are empowering were those who were throwing Kurdish women off the roofs of buildings. It's bizarre. Well, this is the problem. Tom Barrack isn't a student of history. He's a student of Recep Erdogan. And when you have a situation where Tom Barrack is talking about how any historian knows that the Turks, the Iraqis, and the Syrians have always been one unit, that's a narrative straight out of Istanbul or the most ultra-nationalists in Ankara. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to neo-Ottomanism, the people who were exploited by the Ottomans have a much different remembrance of that than do the Turks. And so in this case, Tom Barrack is completely wrong, but the question is, how long will this policy push forward before the natural correction? Because make no mistake, we're going to see a correction once Donald Trump leaves office. I absolutely do think that policy will change, simply because the policy as we see now is to the financial benefit of certain interests, but it's not to a broader US national security policy. What I worry about, as someone who is a policy practitioner but also cares deeply about the Kurds, is how are the Americans going to repair the damage and restore the trust which we have so willfully violated over the past several years. Okay, well, you know, there is a school of thought, and this percolated up during the Arab Spring, that somehow perhaps monarchs were more stable, more legitimate than republics. Because when we looked at what happened in Syria, in Yemen, in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Libya, I mean, we saw monarchies falling. The problem with that narrative, and the reason why, if I can say, Tom Barrack is ignorant of history, is during the wave of Arab nationalism in the 1950s and 60s, we saw monarchies fall. And so if you want to look at those countries which tend to be the most resilient, they're the ones that have money to buy off their adversaries. Now, Jordan and Morocco are different, but they have Gulf money to help them out. So when Tom Barrack is saying that, oh, we need more monarchies, what he's forgetting is that it's not the monarchy that makes a country legitimate. And frankly, it's not the money. The money can make it more stable, but we're not talking about giving these countries money. So what he's doing is betraying freedom, betraying liberty, all for a system which has shown itself to fail in the 1940s, 50s, 1960s, 1970s, up to Saddam Hussein. I've never seen a US ambassador more ignorant of history.